Patrick Mahomes is basically God playing quarterback.
Chiefs Kingdom
Live.
So on at it. What's hot? Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni.
Yeah, when it's grim, be the Grim Reaper and go get it.
It's Mahomes house. And it is good. Arrowhead, man.
The Lombardi Trophy has a red and gold reflection.
You gotta fight for your right to party.
Woo! Howdy, Chiefs Kingdom. It's Wednesday. It's 8 o'clock. It's Chiefs Kingdom Live. Thank you so much for joining us. I have a good show lined up for everybody tonight. Will be a little bit of a somber start to the show. Chiefs lose one of the good guys, but that's part of the pains of having a lot of really, really good players. So I'm obviously referencing talking about L'Jarius Sneed being traded. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the vote coming up next week to renovate Arrowhead. There's been a lot of drama and I don't know if I want to say fighting or bickering or debating maybe is probably the right word to use, back and forth on yes or no vote. We'll break that sucker down and kind of give our opinions on it. Neither of us live in Jackson County, so we can't vote on it, but doesn't mean we don't have an opinion or maybe what we would do. Nick's a guy there. In case y'all didn't know, Nick's a Wales rugby super fan from 9 months ago. I'm just kidding. He's watched them longer than that, but what's the guy's name, Nick?
Louis Rees-Zammit.
Louis Rees-Zammit, visiting with the Chiefs, might be signing a contract. We'll talk about what we think about that, maybe some other NFL news. If y'all have any questions, make sure to throw those in there. It's good to see everybody in the chat here. Looks like we got Big Doug and Maria and Laney checking in already. Sorry if we missed you. Bo's experiencing technical difficulties, so we might have an appearance from him. You never know. He might show up in the chat. So we'll keep an eye out for Brother Bo here. But before we get into it, thanks again for watching. Make sure click or tap that like, click or tap that subscribe. Help spread the word. We sure appreciate it. Nick, how are you doing this evening?
I'm pretty excited actually. Yeah, I popped open X and was just kind of checking things to see what was going on before the show today. Saw that the Chiefs are expected to sign Louis Rees-Zammit, ex-Wales rugby winger, to the squad this week. Interesting news. I mean, to say the least. Who knows if it'll happen, or I mean, even if it does happen, if he'll see the field. But it's interesting news. Sad to see Sneed go. Had a work conference this week. A bunch of people went and did some fun extracurricular activities with those folks. Scott was in Scotty this weekend, so it's been a good week. So how about yourself, man?
Doing real well. Looks like we're maybe getting past this last little cold snap of the year. There was ice on my car this morning. What? But it's early spring. I feel like we've gone straight from spring to summer, or I'm sorry, straight from winter to summer the last few years. So it feels like maybe we just forgot about what spring was like. You still get these cold snaps, especially in March. So otherwise, I'm doing good, man. Let's just talk about the big news since last week. Should have been all pro. L'Jarius Sneed, cornerback. His time has come to an end in Chiefs Kingdom. He's being traded to the Tennessee Titans for a future third-round pick next season and a swap of seventh-round picks. Let's talk about kind of how we feel about this trade and what we feel the Chiefs got. Nick, how do you feel about getting a third-round pick next year? I know on last week's show we talked about like wanting to get more than a third-round pick, and then now it's one that doesn't even really help you with the three-peat this year.
Yeah.
What do you think happened there, and how are you feeling about the return for L'Jarius Sneed?
Yeah, look, I obviously I didn't feel great about the news right off when we heard it. Right, I mean, you feel like you should have got more for a premier cornerback in the league, and then the news sinks in, and you're sitting there thinking, well, it's not like people were offering more, and the Chiefs turned it down to have him go to the Titans. I mean, unless
Oh,
maybe,
no.
but it was a team that we weren't willing to deal him to, right, because of competitive problems or something, but. It's the market is the market, right? And sometimes people get, good bargains. The kind of the talk coming out of it is that, I mean, he has had some knee problems. He's kind of, for this position in his career, he's kind of seen as old, I guess. I don't know, but and then the other side of that is the team had to turn around and pay him a contract right away. And, he's getting about $20 million a year as a cornerback. And so, if you look at it from the perspective of we drafted him in the 4th round and we won Super Bowls with him, right? And really you could argue wouldn't have gone to the Super Bowl without him this year with the play that he made in the Ravens game.
At the very least, went to back-to-back and won back-to-back Super Bowls in large part because of him.
Yep. And so if you look at that, and then that we flip that into a 3rd round pick and got a 7th swap this year. I mean, that it's taking a 4th, winning Super Bowls and turning it into a 3rd. So from that perspective, it's good, recruiting and talent scouting. But overall, it does feel underwhelming from a trade perspective when you've seen guys like Jalen Ramsey initially when he went to the Rams, they gave 2 first-round picks to get him, right? You see some of these people, but I just think that a lot of the teams maybe that were interested, maybe they just weren't willing to either pay him the money he was asking, or they didn't have the draft capital, or I don't know, any bevy of things. How did you feel about it?
Well, last week's episode, I was saying, I mean, I'm not taking a 3rd. I want a 2nd for him.
Right.
So then you end up with the 3rd, and it's next year's. Look, I don't pretend to know enough about the cap and the numbers to know whether the Chiefs could have afforded to keep L'Jarius Sneed this year or not. The guy, is he the best corner in the league? I mean, he had the best year of any corner in the league now. Whether he can duplicate, and replicate that next season or not, he is a little bit older, 27 years old, so not past his prime by any stretch of the imagination, but also not 23, right? 24 years old. So the Chiefs were in a spot where I feel like most of the other teams in the league knew that they, if not needed to move him, really, really wanted to move him.
Right.
And so you don't have the leverage when you're in that position, right? It's all about who can lean on who the most. And teams are sitting back saying, I mean, yeah, if you want to pay him $20 million this year and try to figure that out with the cap, and then next year, now they could tag him a 2nd year, and figure out a way to pay him. Hey, more power to you. We'll look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's also, I don't know, maybe he told the Chiefs, I'm not playing on the franchise tag. And so the Chiefs, maybe that factors into their discussions. Who knows if his agent or anybody gets that information out to try to get a trade going. There's so much stuff that happens behind the scenes that we don't know about. For me to be really all that critical of the trade is tough. I'm definitely disappointed. I definitely wanted more. Put a post out on X that we were old enough to remember when a top corner in the league would get you a top running back in return for a trade. Obviously, going back to the Champ Bailey, Clinton Portis trade from a long time ago. I was being more sarcastic than anything. Those kind of trades rarely happen then, even more rare now, right? So, but I don't know. The Chiefs, they clear $20 million in cap room with draft picks coming up, the signing of Hollywood Brown, the receiver. Maybe the Chiefs aren't done. Patrick Mahomes had restructured his deal. Maybe there's another big trade in the works or a big signing or something coming this way. The Chiefs are kind of in a precarious position with the tackles and some other positions on the team. So, yeah, disappointed, but I'm going to have a hard time being really critical because all I know is the Chiefs tagged him, and it was going to be tough to navigate the cap and pay him even on the 1-year deal. That's about all we know, right? We don't know who offered what. We don't know if he refused told the team, I'm not going to play on the tag, if there was a possible holdout situation. The knee thing is interesting to me. He was held out of practice, right? Missed some practices this season, later in the year in particular with the knee problem. The guy played amazing with a bad knee. How bad was his knee? If he could play that well, I don't know. But look, he's going to be missed. I know that. Chiefs have moved on, and it's been pointed out by other people on social media and experts that they let Charvarius Ward go and were able to replace him, right? And so they didn't overpay for him. It's obviously a position the Chiefs feel that they can draft at and that they can develop at, and that they're not going to pay big money for a corner. That's just not somewhere they feel they necessarily have to or need to give a big contract out. So I'm not surprised that he's gone. Definitely a bummer, man. The guy just not only was he a hell of a player, he kind of brought a nastiness and an edge to the defense, right? We talked about that with Frank Clark when he came in. A guy that's going to get up in your grill and let you know it's going to be a long day. And he, saw him jamming Tyreek Hill in the Rice Bowl, the Frozen game there. The guy, Justin Jefferson, I want to say when the Chiefs played the Vikings, he got like a personal foul penalty like on the second or third play of the game, getting up in Justin Jefferson's face and saying it's going to be a long day. So not only was he immensely talented and just a damn good corner, he was like a tone setter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the Chiefs are going to miss that. There was a guy, Chamari Connor filled in the latter part of last year, played well. The Chiefs have been kind of grooming Jalen Watson and can't think of the other kid's name now. His name's escaping me. So, but they feel like they've got some guys. You still got Trent McDuffie that you feel pretty comfortable about putting on another team's number one wide receiver. But how much of an impact do we think this has on the Chiefs defense next year? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe. Well, where do you rank it with 0 being the lowest and 10 being the most, obviously?
It's difficult to say, right? Because the team's going to be different, but sometimes these really good defensive performances are difficult to repeat the next year anyway.
Yeah.
L'Jarius Sneed the year before, he's been a good player, but he definitely played at a higher level this past season than he had. So I think that it's definitely going to have an impact, but you're seeing McDuffie now coming into where he's not a rookie. He's not a second year guy. Now he's coming into his third season. He's played in 2 Super Bowls now, right? 3 AFC championship games.
Made huge plays in the Super Bowls.
Yeah, huge plays in the Super Bowl. So you don't need 2 lockdown corners. It's great to have 2, but you really need one really good player that can follow, right? And then you just need competent people on the opposite side of them. So I think there's definitely a drop off. It'll just be how steep of a drop off, and is that more than offset by getting somebody like Hollywood Brown on the offense? And look, I know that, Kevin, you're not the only person that has been echoing this sentiment, right? And I guess it just really depends on how you want to view Brett Veach as a GM. So, if you're sitting there saying, well, Patrick Mahomes covers for a lot of the mistakes because he's that great, then you can have that opinion. Or at what point do we sit there and say, we trust the guy that has won 3 Super Bowls and just delivered back-to-back Super Bowls as a GM? And yeah, this wasn't the greatest deal that we've seen for a cornerback trade, but again, the market is the market, right? Sometimes it's not just how good of a player is or how good you are at negotiating. It's what are people willing to pay at that point in time. There's a lot of teams that have been delivering huge contracts to their quarterbacks. I mean, Daniel Jones is getting paid $40 million a year. You know what I mean? So,
That's a bad deal,
right? Sometimes you go to sell your house and it's just in a down market, and
That's Big Doug.
We're Big Doug every time you whole life.
That's not funny. Big Doug's probably pissed at me right now for saying that. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so it sucks. We would have liked to get more, but I think we got what the best deal was to the teams we were willing to trade to. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. It does clear up the cap space so we can make some other signings. We've got a lot of other people, Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, guys that we need to try to sign if possible. And maybe
Chris Jones to a mega deal extension.
Chris Jones to a mega deal. And we kind of knew, right? I know that I was hopeful last week that we would keep him because I thought that if somebody was going to make a big contract, it would have happened already. I mean, I obviously should not be a GM because I was totally wrong on that. But, we've got other people to sign and other things to focus on. And so now this is done. It's out of the way. We've got another 3rd round pick next year that we can use. And it's really just, let's see what we can do in the draft and what we can do with this extra $19 million we just freed up off the books.
Yeah, look, Brett Veach, is the guy perfect? Does he walk on water? No. Is he going to make mistakes from here time to time and bad picks and maybe not the best trade? Probably. Do I think he probably took the best offer, the best deal on the table for L'Jarius Sneed? Probably. It's hard to fault the guy for taking probably the best offer available. Again, it just gets into there's so much stuff that we don't know about these negotiations and what's going on. Maybe the Chiefs look at him as someone who's saying they think his knee's getting ready to explode. I mean, we heard that with Juju right after he left here. So, again, like we said earlier, maybe he said, I'm not going to play on the tag. I want this much money per year, and I want this much guaranteed. And if I don't get it, I'm not going to play. Then you're sitting there with a guy that's not going to play. You get nothing for him. You have the ugliness and the distraction of a holdout. There's just so much to consider and so many factors to the equation that we don't have. So I'm not going to be overly critical of the guy. I definitely wanted more. I think Chiefs Kingdom wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
He got a mega payday from the Titans. A lot of these times, too, I look at what these other teams are doing, and you're looking at their track record. The Titans, they don't have the best track record here recently of players, right? I mean, they trade A.J. Brown, let him go. Don't really get much for him. They got a draft pick and a wide receiver who has not come anywhere close to what A.J. Brown is. Then this year they pay Calvin Ridley a ton of money, a fine player. Has never been, I don't know, as consistent on A.J. Brown's level. I know he had a huge year a couple of years ago in Atlanta. Looked like maybe the best wide receiver in the league. But that was 3 seasons ago, right? Because he missed a season because of the gambling situation. Then last year had a down year in Jacksonville. He's 3 years removed from that big of a deal. So if a team like the Titans is willing to give L'Jarius Sneed a major deal and they make bad deals, I mean, maybe that means paying Sneed a bit was a bad deal. And maybe other teams just weren't looking at it and weren't making the offers. And so he took what he could get. You never know, too. He could package that 3rd rounder next year for another pick to maybe move up and get somebody that's really stellar. So it's always difficult to analyze trades until you see what the return is and how it pans out. That's why they always say it's kind of hard to judge a draft pick or a trade until like year 3, right afterwards. Maybe something.
But if the feeling is that you're probably not gonna get a guy as good as L'Jarius Sneed with that third rounder, that's probably a fair thing, right? That just doesn't factor in the money that we would have had to pay to keep him. And maybe this was just him, showing up and having this year maybe a year too late. If this had happened in the year before with the Super Bowl 57 year, then the Chiefs could have probably got more because they still had that extra year on his deal, right? So that the other team's getting a year of him cheap. They could use that to either, work out a new deal or et cetera. But I think that, the Chiefs definitely seems like they lost a little bit of leverage there with having to have that huge cap number franchise tag him, and other teams maybe just were aware and they're like, well, we know you got to dump him, so we're not going to offer a lot. So
yeah, maybe if anything I'd be critical of is not identifying Sneed a couple years ago and maybe getting him an extension early. You see teams do this. They wait until the last year of a player's deal and then they have a huge contract year. And then you're in a position where you kind of have to overpay him. The Chiefs, they did that. The most famously, I think, probably comes to mind was Justin Houston. There was talks about extending him, and they didn't do it. And then in his final year, he almost sets the sack record, and now he's got all the leverage when he's negotiating.
Eric Berry, too.
Eric Berry waiting until the very end, putting it off to the last minute. Now, again, this kind of goes back to the same scenario as trade. Maybe they offered him an extension a year ago. And maybe they said, we'll give you $16 million or $15 million a year. And he goes, nope, I'm going to hold out. I think I want this. So they might have, again, we are speculating and making assessments without having all of the data and without having all the information.
Yeah.
But, maybe you could have got him. Maybe you could have signed him earlier and you don't get in this position. But maybe not. Maybe he turned it down too, or I don't know. But I feel like Brett Veach has had more hits than misses.
Yeah, for sure.
And I trust that the guy has got a plan, but he's also not perfect. And I'm not going to sit here and be an apologist for the guy. If 3 years down the line, they've used that third round pick and they got nothing and the defense really struggles next year and the pass defense falls off a cliff, maybe I reserve the right to be more critical of him. Be interested to see like what the cap looks like and what the other moves and things that they make are too. I don't know if they could afford to keep him even a franchise tag at that $19 million a year this year. I'm guessing they probably could if they tagged him. They were going to figure out a way to make it work, but it would have made it much, much, much more difficult, obviously. So tough to lose Sneed. And the worst part, too, is he's got to go to Tennessee and wear those ugly-ass uniforms that they got. God dang, man.
Flaming thumbtack?
I would have taken $2 or $3 million less a year not to have to wear that jersey. But, L'Jarius Sneed is a Chiefs legend at this. The guy, come on, man. Was one of the best defenders on a badass defense that gave the team, carried the team, however you want to say it, to back-to-back Super Bowl championships. Forever grateful for that guy, and just seems like a good dude, right? You never hear about the guy getting in trouble. He was active in the community, had a good attitude, was always posting and talking a lot about his mom and helping his mom out, and had a lot of respect for his mother. Guy that came from a rough upbringing and background, right? His brother was
some
killed,
severe personal,
right?
Trauma in his family life with his brother, passing away. And
right. Yeah. And so just a great story. And I'm happy for the dude, though. I'm going to miss him, and it sucks that he's not going to be wearing the red and yellow next year. But at the same time, the guy balled out, and he bet on himself, and he went out and earned himself a big fat payday. And every dollar that he got from the Titans is deserved as far as I'm concerned. the guy went out and earned it and played his ass off and overcame a lot of adversity to get to the NFL. And if he really had a knee injury and he was able to play at that level, the guy had to have been just absolutely gutting it and gritting it out every week in a long season. I mean, back-to-back Super Bowls. I mean, you're playing an extra 3 or 4 games a year for 2 years. That's almost another half a season that these guys
against
have played.
the best teams.
Against the best teams. So I'm
Yeah.
happy for him. Congratulations, L'Jarius. Thank you for everything that you did for the Chiefs. I mean, his hallmark play has got to be the punch out of Zay Flowers
Yeah.
heading into the end zone. I've seen some people say that, if he doesn't make that play, the Chiefs don't win that game. The Chiefs still would have been winning that game, even if he does score right there. Would have been a lot more precarious and would have been much more of a nail biter than it was already coming down the stretch there, especially the way the Chiefs offense was struggling to kind of move the ball and score there. But any other maybe big plays or anything that stands out for you? Your memory you have of L'Jarius Sneed?
Well, from this year, the jam of Tyreek Hill in the Rice Bowl, where Tyreek Hill even famously put on X is like jam my A all the way to Cancun.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the cold, taking one of the premier guys totally out of the play on a crucial down, right? So that stands out. Yeah, I echo everything you're saying, though. It's like when we saw Willie Gay going, right? Willie Gay wasn't as big of a impact player on this team, but everybody's just sad to see him go, but really happy for him. It wasn't parting on bad terms or anything.
No, not at all.
So, I think about the year that he had going up against, Devontae Adams twice, going up against Justin Jefferson, right? Going up against, who
Tyreek
else?
Hill.
Tyreek Hill twice. He went up against A.J. Brown. And
Garrett Wilson on the Jets. Keenan Allen on the Chargers twice. I mean, when you look at the year the guy had, it wasn't like he had to go up and shut down 2 or 3 number one wide receivers. That guy was going up against a number one, legit top 5 to
Stephon
10
Diggs
wide receiver
twice.
almost every week.
Yeah. And to give up, 1 touchdown the whole season.
Right.
And no 100-yard games that I'm aware of. Now, he did have a lot of penalties, and that may have factored in, too, to the trade value. Like, look, he's good, but he got a lot of penalties, and I don't know if you guys know this, but, there's perception that the Chiefs get all the calls, so what's he going to get called for if he comes to my team? But I don't know. So I put this up here. John C. put Neil Smith as the worst loss to free agency. That's a big one. Jared Allen was another one where we let a Hall of Fame player go.
Yeah.
Can you think of anybody else that was a huge loss in free agency? Well, Tyreek Hill.
They traded him. He wasn't a free agent. They straight up traded him. So,
but it was due to free agency, right? He wasn't going to accept the contract. I understand.
Yeah, but he was still under contract, right? Which I guess you could say L'Jarius Sneed was too with the franchise tag. So
right.
Maybe that's parsing terms here and splitting hairs. But, man, I'm trying to think free agent quarterback or free agent player that just left.
Tony G, that's a good one, John C.
Yeah, Tony Gonzalez. Tony kind of wanted out of here, though. And I can't say I blame the guy. Had a Hall of Fame career, never won a damn playoff game here. So, Derek Johnson leaving and going to
the Raiders.
Didn't he go somewhere before the Raiders? I remember it hurt losing Super DJ. But, again, that's just part of the –
I think that was more the Chiefs not wanting to sign Super DJ.
Well, yeah, but, it was a guy that left, right? And maybe he was way past his prime at that point. But, just emotionally, it's sad to see the guy go. The guy was a hallmark on the defense forever.
Well, if you're throwing in just guys that it hurt to see go, Jamal Charles leaving, playing in another uniform was tough.
Right. Rich Gannon back in the
Oh,
day leaving and going to the Raiders and leading them to a Super Bowl.
winning MVP that year too. Yeah.
And MVP that year. That's a tough loss. Free agent guy that they let walk that turned out to be a bad move. So, and I'm not saying this trade might not turn out to be a bad deal. It's just I don't know enough about
losing your best friend there, Nick Lowry.
Yeah, Nick the Kick, Nick Lowry. Yeah, and again, it's just part of the problem when you draft as well as the Chiefs have and you sign as many good players and you have as much success as the Chiefs have had. You just can't afford everybody, right?
Right.
And sometimes you let people go. Chiefs felt Sneed was the guy to let go, and Chris Jones was the man to pay. We'll see how the next 2 or 3 years work out for those two players. Maybe it turns out that was the bad way to go, but we won't know until then. I probably would have signed Chris Jones over L'Jarius Sneed.
You got to after seeing what he's done in these postseasons.
Right. And the fact you got Trent McDuffie that you can kind of throw in there.
Yep.
And maybe fill that void. The Chiefs really didn't have anybody already on the team that's going to step in and provide what Chris Jones has provided. So I feel like they made the right move. I think Nick feels like they made the right move. I'd be interested to see what everybody in the chat thinks, if Jones or Sneed was the smart person to keep. But, yeah, we did have old Elvis Gerback.
He should have left the building.
Elvis Gerback threw for 500 yards in a game. Big Doug, don't be. Oh, shit. Is there a more like weird stat? It's like so hard to accomplish 500-yard game passing. And then when you look at the quarterbacks that have accomplished it, it's a bunch of dudes like Elvis Gerback and shit. Like
no hitters.
I know
no hitters are kind of like that, right?
Right. Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the no hitter of football. But best wishes to L'Jarius, as long as he don't play the Chiefs in the playoffs. I don't see the Titans as a playoff team next year. So the Chiefs don't play in the regular season, so I don't really worry about that coming back to bite the Chiefs too badly here. But congratulations on getting the big payday. Thank you for everything you did here in Kansas City. Is L'Jarius Sneed a Ring of Honor guy someday?
Maybe.
Player in back-to-back Super Bowl champion defenses.
Yeah, that's a tough one. He might eventually make it, but
he didn't have the length that a lot of these guys career-wise that Ring of Honor guys have had. But man, when he was here, he made the most of his time, right? I bet you see him in there someday.
Yeah, I don't know. Willie Gay, what did he get? He got like $5 million.
$5 million from the Saints. He didn't get the bag, as I like to say at all, like L'Jarius did. But Willie Gay was a guy that he was a fan favorite, and he had just a really good attitude and was a fun guy to look like to play with and be a teammate of. And he would get the crowd going with the swag surfing and everything. But he was a guy that, I mean, I don't know that he was really much of like a 3-down linebacker in his career here. I mean, he was off the field a lot in obvious passing situations. So I thought maybe you would have seen him get a little bit longer deal than 1 year. I mean, I'm not sneezing at 1 year, $5 million. If there's someone out there that wants to pay us 1 year, $5 million to do this show, let us know, and I'll sign tonight. But
I'll take half of that.
But yeah, so I thought maybe you'd see him get a little bit more money than he did, but he moves on. Before we do the stadium thing, let's talk about your guy here, Nick, while we're talking about players and moves. Chiefs had a visit with Wales. Is he like a superstar player? Is that what you would consider him?
So, yeah, in the Six Nations League, right, which is the rugby tournament there for UK and Europe, he was one of the premier players, definitely the best on the Wales team. And he had entered they've got like a NFL player development program over there in Europe. And so he forewent playing in the tournament this year to enter that program. I just if you guys are wondering why the hell I have a Wales rugby jersey just laying around for this news, I actually have a coworker and friend that lives in Wales, and she's a huge rugby supporter. And so we did a jersey swap because the colors matched. And so I'm an adopted Wales rugby team fan, and she's an adopted Chiefs fan. So I sent her a Mahomes jersey, and she sent me a Wales rugby jersey. And so pretty fortuitous that a couple of years later it worked out that we were potentially signing their best guy. I know that they were gutted that he left, really happy for him to pursue an NFL career. But yeah, I mean, he was like he was a super fast. He's the winger, so like rugby, they spread out. He's the guy on the outside that was their speedy guy that could really help make people miss in space. So I think I was reading up a little bit before the show. He's 6'3", 210, and supposedly ran around like a 4'3", 40. So he's pretty tall.
Pretty impressive. I mean, that's a lot of speed for that height and size. No doubt.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he can catch forward passes, right, as opposed to only backwards passes. But I'm not gonna lie, the very first thing I thought was Travis Kelce laterals all day, man. Like get a rugby player out there. So
I was thinking maybe fullback or something.
hey, he could be, yeah.
That size, but if he's got that kind of speed, you probably want to try to get him out in the open field and get him the ball more than putting him in there blocking, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting to see some of these players. Like you saw, I mean, how many times did you hear over the course of like Tony Gonzalez's career and Antonio Gates' career, like college basketball players, guys that maybe have a body type and a skill set that can transition over to a different sport. Nick and I are old enough to remember when there was two-way players in the NFL, right? Guys that are two-sport players. Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders. There was guys that played baseball and football. I don't think with injuries and the amount of money these guys are getting to play MLB or NFL, you'll ever see someone risk that by playing two sports. But it's definitely not unheard of. It's not unprecedented. I feel like there was a guy a few years ago. There was a rugby player that did the same thing. And was he on the Bears?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't remember him really being like a breakout star or anything. Maybe he had a decent career. So, hey, the guy,
right? I mean, it's a long shot that he makes the team if they sign him. And
I mean, if they sign to a contract, he goes through OTAs, goes to training camp, see what you got, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's cool to see the aside from the fact that I have a connection. I'm not a huge rugby fan, but I do watch. Wales unfortunately took home the wooden spoon this year. They were the worst team in the tournament. One of the reasons being that their best player, decided to try to make it in the NFL. But it's cool to see that the Chiefs are really exploring all avenues, and it means they have a good scouting department, because I was interested to see if he could do something in the NFL when my friend was talking about how he decided to go. So I know that all of Wales will be super excited for this news. I mean, imagine like your best player leaving, but then you find out he's going to like the best team in the NFL that won back-to-back Super Bowls. Might make it feel a little worthwhile. But
not if you don't make the team. You gave up a year, put them in the doldrums to not even make the team. I mean, you got to make the team, and they're always be excited for him. I guarantee.
He wasn't even good enough to make our team as like a third string guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched rugby. It's obviously similar to American football. A lot of differences too, but definitely some similarities. So, I mean, right now you have to put some money on it, like $5,000. Does he make the team? Does he suit up regular season game this year or no?
If I had to put $5,000 on it, yeah, screw it. Yeah,
if I just said, do you think he makes it or not? Of course it's easier to say, yeah. I mean, you gotta has some substance. Got to
Yeah,
make you think about it a little bit.
Got to put some units on it. Yeah, look, I think so. I think he's a really talented guy. I mean, he's a like I don't understand a lot about the sport, right? I'm not into all the intricacies, but even as a person just watching for fun to support a friend, like he stood out, right? He stood out as a guy that was more talented than a lot of the other people on the field when from the games that I saw where he played. So
Yeah. Big Doug's talk about the Aussie football player that was the punter. God, what was that guy's name? He was famous for laying out that guy in that return. He's like, all he's got to do is beat the punter, and the punter freaking put one of the hardest hits he's ever put ever on a returner. What was that guy's name? He was a badass, no doubt about that. He was an animal out there, but maybe somebody.
If anybody that's watching this is interested suddenly in rugby, they just put out a Six Nations Netflix documentary series from the season from last year. So
I'm just giving Nick a hard time here. Someone in the chat, look up that damn guy, that guy's damn name. The Australian rules football punter.
Crocodile
Punty. That's pretty good. John C's the resident comedian here on Chiefs Kingdom Live. Yeah, we'll see. I'm going to say he doesn't make the team. I don't know. Seems like a tall task, man, to like never play American football and then just come over for a year and practice and make the team. But hey, he could. I mean,
it's got to be so different putting on pads, right, in a helmet.
Yeah, and learning to run routes and having to go downfield. Like you said, catching the ball on the run downfield. There's a lot of guys that can run really fast. Don't mean they can catch the ball while they run really fast. Just ask Kadarius Toney. Had to go there. Sorry. No one in the chat's going to help us out and find out the Australian football guys.
Tony was pretty good at the laterals. It just was to the other team.
No, that's what I'm saying. Catching it downfield's the hard part. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he does. If he makes a team, something to keep an eye on. Obviously, if the Chiefs end up signing him and then he goes to training camp, I'm sure all of the news will be following that guy and he'll be a storyline. So, something to keep an eye on. Kind of another off-season storyline here is the vote next Tuesday for the stadium renovation of Arrowhead. There's also the downtown stadium aspect of that for the Kansas City Royals, who opening day tomorrow for the Royals, playing the Minnesota Twins, I believe. Game 1 of 162. I love when baseball season starts because summer's not too far away, right?
Yeah.
You're like maybe 6 weeks away from summer in the pool and getting out in the sun. But the vote next week, for the purposes of this show, we will talk about what we think about the renovations for it and whether we think it's going to pass, whether maybe or not we would vote for it. It's kind of a controversial subject here. Lots of good people I've seen making arguments on both sides for the vote yes or vote no argument. Was a little underwhelmed with the plans and the renovations that the Chiefs kind of put out there. Felt like maybe they were a little rushed. A lot of it was like parking lot, game day, like pregame activities and stuff like that. I know there were some people that were not happy about them stripping out seats of the lower bowl and putting in the field suites. Some people were like, I'm going to lose my seat so some rich guy can sit in a suite. But there's also the aspect of it, wanting to keep Arrowhead and wanting to continue to play games there. Well, we talked about Arrowhead Stadium and just the void of meaningful games that played in that stadium for the first 47 years of its history or whatever. Now it's really, I think, getting its due here with all these AFC Championship games and Super Bowl quality team and Patrick Mahomes going out there. The fans are really, really starting to kind of like, I think, see what Arrowhead has always kind of been destined for. Iconic stadium. It's a bucket list destination for a lot of football fans, not just Chiefs fans, but I lost count of the number of away visiting team fans that I've seen that were like, yeah, no, Arrowhead was on the list, like at the top or near the top of the list of stadiums to go see for away games.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping the iconic stadium, man. I mean, I'm all for it. I don't want to see them build a new stadium somewhere else. I'll tell you that. I like Arrowhead. It's nostalgia. It's loud. It's a fun place to go watch a game at. So not a bad seat in the house, really. Nick, what do you think about the proposed renovations? And I mean, do you think the vote gets passed, yes or no? And if you were voting on it, which way would you vote? You don't have to say so if you don't. I mean, either way. I mean, it doesn't matter. But
oh man, trying to make me infamous on the internet. Look, I think that I do agree that what the Chiefs kind of put out there seemed lackluster from a renovation standpoint. The other side of that, though, is how much do you want them to
change
Arrowhead, right? So
yeah. No, that's a good point.
Maybe they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't there on the changes. It did seem like, you know, aside from the covered concourse, which I think is huge for cold weather games.
Yeah.
You know, people being able to, I mean, think about, they're talking about people getting frostbite and stuff. We were able to pick up relatively cheap compared to face value some club level seats in that heated concourse. That covered heated concourse was, I mean, you know, yeah. I mean,
it was nice.
It you know, might have saved you a little bit there, right? I mean, you know, you had to switch out some foot warmers that weren't working. Yeah. You had some numb toes going on.
I'm glad to report that the black spot underneath my big toe nail on my right foot is completely gone now this week. So
that's good, man. I know everybody worried about that. But
I wasn't worried for the first 2 or 3 weeks, but after about 3 weeks of that thing, I was like,
so yeah. So all right. So John, see here. I know you're asking here. So for the Royals, I'm hearing that Nashville is actually a potential city they could go to. But I think a lot of this is like not necessarily that they would leave Kansas City, but they would leave like Kansas City, right? It's kind of like how the San Francisco 49ers are in Santa Clara. They may go to the area over in Kansas on the Kansas side, which is
Kansas
called
City,
Legend.
Kansas. They've got the racetrack out there, Kansas Speedway. They've got the Legend shopping, the Hollywood casinos out there now.
Yeah, and so that's you know the revenue would then leave the state, right? A lot of that tourism dollars, people aren't going to be staying probably on the Missouri side. They'd have hotels and stuff over there. So, I mean, I think that's a part of it. The vote, I don't know. I think about like our city's kind of hesitation to adopt and go for new things, right? The airport terminal is a recent example of that. A lot of us didn't want a new airport terminal. My conference this week, I had people flying in from everywhere. The first thing that everybody brought up that had been here before is, man, your new airport is really nice, right? Like it's, you know, I didn't realize that you guys had that. It's just a good look for the city. It makes things, you know, makes it seem like we're kind of growing up, right? So, and I look at this not as, because I think a lot of the dissenters look at it as, why would you pay a billionaire millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money for them to put seats in for their friends? I don't think that that's like necessarily fair or taking into account what the Chiefs do for the city specifically. And I'm going to talk about, this is a Chiefs podcast. We can talk about the Royals if we want, but I want to talk specifically about the Chiefs.
Yeah,
it's about all of the impact that they have from like job standpoint, from brand recognition, from tourism of, I mean, people coming in from all over the country to watch their team play Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead Stadium, right? Like that's a That's a
Well,
bucket.
that and like Chiefs fans that have season tickets in Iowa and Nebraska and Oklahoma and Illinois, and I mean even further out when you go to Arrowhead, you see license plates from all over the 5 or 6 or 7 state region. So
There's people all over the world that were talking about Kansas City because Travis Kelce was dating Taylor Swift.
yeah,
And if you think about just the impact that can have, right? I mean, people there's Swifties that are potentially wanting to come in and go to games at Arrowhead so that they can maybe see Taylor Swift and watch her while she's in the box seats, right? Like Patrick Mahomes brought in Whataburgers, and him and his wife had the KC Current. I mean, there are untold knock-on effects from having the Chiefs here that legitimize our city as on a national scale. We're the epicenter of the entertainment / sports world over the last 12 months with Taylor Swift coming here and us winning back-to-back Super Bowls. And so that's an investment, right? That's not like giving somebody money. That's like an investment you make with somebody in a partnership for something that is good for the Hunt family, right? I'm not saying it's not good for the Hunt family, but it is good for the city. I mean, it's good for the city, so it doesn't go the opposite direction. It's not going to be dilapidated. You're not, and so that keeping Arrowhead Stadium or what they presented, is that going to be the final, sign off of what they're going to do? They'll probably come up with some other things that they're going to do. If I got to vote, I would vote yes. I mean, I think that there are other people that are, we talked about the market is the market for Sneed, right? And you got to kind of sign the deal as things are presented. You can argue whether it's fair or not for owners to say, well, I could potentially leave if you don't pass this, but they have a market, they have demand, right? And whether it's fair or unfair, it's there. And there's other people that are willing to make that deal. I would vote yes and keep the Chiefs in Kansas City and keep Arrowhead. I've thought a lot about it, and that's kind of where I'm at. Unfortunately, I'm not a Jackson County resident, so I don't vote. But those are my points.
Do you think it passes?
Do I think it passes? Yeah, I think it's going to pass. I think that people don't want. The fear of loss is huge, right? And it's not the right way to motivate people, but it's a good way to motivate people. And so I think it's going to pass.
Yeah, I don't know. I was not a fan of them talking about, well, we might explore other options. I mean, that's kind of threatening, right?
Yeah.
You're supposedly a partner with the city and the county in this thing. To me, it feels rushed, feels kind of, I don't want to say half-assed that's not the right term to use, but the economic impact aspect of it, there's a lot of studies out there that show, well, yeah, it's going to generate X amount of dollars, but when you put that up against with what you pay extra in taxes, it kind of wipes that out. So it's almost like a break even for the people who live there, because you're paying hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes, and then you're generating hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue. So I don't know. I'm not an economist. I don't know that it at these stadiums, they necessarily have the economic impact that they say they do. I realize John C's talking about concerts and things they have there. That's the Chiefs get the money from that because they lease the stadium out, and then when they have events there, they rake in the cash. So, I think it's going to pass. I'm kind of on the fence on whether or not I would vote for it. I kind of want to see more of a plan, I think, from the Chiefs and the Royals too. That's the other part of it too. If it was just the Chiefs and it wasn't as much money, I would probably be more inclined to just say, yeah, I'd vote yes for it. But the Royals thing is kind of murky and convoluted as well. So I think, if it doesn't pass, it's going to be because of the Royals and the downtown stadium aspect of it, that half of the vote. But I also don't think that they'll leave Arrowhead. I think you're gonna have to vote no 2 or 3 or 4 times on renovations or a tax plan before they just pack up shop and head over to Kansas or head somewhere else. So I probably right now I would probably vote no on it. I just want to see more of a plan, and I want to see like some better stuff, some more bang for your buck. But it doesn't matter because I don't live there, so
Right.
it'd also be further away from here for games if they move.
It's a
to
show
Johnson
divided.
County, so
Show divided. So
yeah. So I mean, that doesn't mean I hate Arrowhead or I hate the Chiefs or I don't. I'm for giving these stadium owners the money. Look, I mean, there's a lot of risk in having. I mean, and I know it sounds crazy to say that in these sports teams. Maybe not so much the NFL because the values of these franchises just continue to go up and up and up and up. But I mean, you have a couple COVID years, or you make some bad rule changes. You have some scandals. A different sport comes along. The concussion safety aspect of it, people maybe aren't playing as much football, so maybe the quality, maybe you start getting people playing baseball or basketball or soccer or some other sport, and it gets passed up. And it's a civic pride thing for me having a place like Arrowhead. I mean, either you're a major league city or you're not. We got a uncle Jethro. And he's convinced. He goes, man, the difference between Kansas City and Wichita is the Chiefs and the Royals. He says this city would be a lot more like Wichita than it is the way it is now.
Yeah.
If you didn't have those pro sports franchises. So, I know John's never going to vote for me.
yeah,
It's probably smart not to vote for me for any kind of anything, but. Yeah, I don't know. I want to see more, and I want to see more of a plan. And I feel like if you're gonna give that kind of money, like they should be doing a little bit more than putting a bridge out there and then like a party field out in the parking lot where the K was. Like I don't really see that's all that advantageous. And like you said though, maybe they don't change the stadium as much. I mean, maybe they don't want to change the stadium a whole lot, right? Maybe some better video boards or go back to old style seats that were louder when you banged on them than the new ones. Is still not over that, but
yeah.
I think it's gonna pass though.
If I was to vote no, it would be because I haven't seen enough from what they say they intend to do with the money, right? So I do get that. For me, it's just like why are you even gonna, like all the kids say, the FAFO, right? F around and find out.
Yeah.
I mean, you lose them, they're gone, and they're not coming back. At least until that other stadium is dilapidated. And I see a lot of people that are saying, "Hey, don't do this for these people. It's like extorting the city." And they're all living in cities where they've done this exact thing for their team, and so
it is, and that's a bad argument to have because. You get civic pride. You get the team there. You get to rep the team. I mean, it's an advantage. I'm not against.
You're not against like let's call that a TIF, right?
Team, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against that aspect of it.
Okay. No. I would like to see better plans. To see.
Yeah.
John, see, I get it. The plans look nice. I think that it's just. I think that. What they're doing with the footprint of the entire Kaufman with just that little fan activation zone, I think that they could do more with that than just have like basically like a mini little football field that fans can pay to go tailgate at. But I agree. I think we're both in agreement that we're not against the idea of giving them the money, but maybe you just want to see, like work a little bit harder for it, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit more solid plans too. It's kind of like, this is a concept that we might go, man. If we're going to give you $300 million, so you better be telling us like what you're going to get, not what you might get.
And I saw people that were like living in St. Louis, and they're like, we see what Kansas City's doing with the investments in their downtown area and building stuff and the new airport and everything, and we're jealous. I mean,
I'm Debbie Downer on the airport, man. Like
I know.
We didn't get enough. We didn't get as much as we should have for what we paid for that thing. And it's small, and it's supposed to last another 50 years. Let me tell you something. 30, 40 years. That place ain't gonna be, that airport ain't gonna be big enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a whole other side subject.
Yeah, Maria lives in a city where they have no NFL team. They moved.
Right. Man, they weren't willing to pony up the public funds for new stadiums, so the team left. Now they tried again. They tried to vote 3 or 4 or 5 times to get them a stadium, and they turned it down. I mean, I really don't think the Chiefs or the Royals are leaving Kansas City, Jackson County. If they vote it down this April, they'll put it back on the ballot and come back to the table. I feel like with a better plan next time. But again,
do you think it's going to fail then?
I'm sorry?
Do you think it's going to fail?
No, I think it's going to pass. I think the Chiefs are going to carry it. People love Arrowhead Stadium.
Patrick Mahomes is up for adoption as a city.
Huh?
The city finds out that Patrick Mahomes is up for adoption, right?
I don't know.
They're like, oh, we could get the Chiefs. Now I know that the Chiefs are under lease probably through most of Patrick Mahomes' career, but this is kind of
right. Well, there's also the whole it costs a shit ton of money to move a team from one city to another. Like you got to pay like fees and there's like I don't want to call it a fine to the league, but it's not cheap and it's not quick and easy to do. So yeah, I don't feel like if it doesn't pass, like they're just going to bail and they're just going to jet. And to be honest with someone like me, part of the thing that factors into like my no vote is to me, like I mean, no matter if they go to Johnson County or if they stay where they're at now, I mean, I'm still going to go. Right. So maybe if I lived in Jackson County, my opinion would be a little bit different, but it's good to see Dylan.
What's up, Dylan?
Checking in here in the chat. What's up, Dylan? Hope you're doing well, man.
So we got a question from Laney. Why do the Royals need a new stadium? They can't even fill the one that they have.
It's not that they need a new stadium; they want a new stadium. Like that's the whole thing.
They've been saying that the concrete in Royals, the Kauffman Stadium is got concrete cancer, is what they call it, and it's rotting, which is interesting because they built it with the same concrete and construction company, I think, that built Arrowhead at the same time, right? They've also come out now and said that's not why they're doing it. That's like one of the it's a concern or whatever. But yeah, I mean that is one of the things that they've kind of said is an issue with the stadium. They feel like they could fill the stadium more easily if it's downtown around more of like a population base. Mobile Center and Crossroads area, right?
Listen, man, you know the thing that fills stadiums or not? Winning games. Like that's how you get people. When the Royals were going to the postseason every year and going to World Series those 2 or 3 years there in a row, trust me, that place was full. There wasn't an empty seat in the house. I mean, it was over $1,000 to go to a World Series game, $600 or $700 to go to ALCS games, which luckily I got to go to those for free. R.I.P. Russ Briney. God damn, fucking good dude that guy was. But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit. So, yeah, it's not that the Royals really need a new stadium. They just want a new stadium, and they want to go downtown. I don't know. I mean, if they move downtown, it'd be fine. It'd be cool. Whatever. I mean, I enjoy the Royals. I like going to Royals games. I haven't been in a couple of years. I don't think I went to one game last year. Just
we go to the Girl Scouts games, and that's about the only game I go to a year.
I used to go a lot more in the last couple of years, but when they shut it down for COVID and then they were doing the mask thing and all that for that year, I just kind of like got out of going, really, you know? I mean,
right.
That's kind of those things where you don't do it for a couple of years and it's kind of not out of sight, out of mind, but it's not something that you're doing, and so it doesn't really come to mind. But I'm going to try to get to some games this year. I think they've made some moves and brought in some guys and have some.
It's not Bobby
star
Witt
power with Salvi and Bobby Witt. Cole Reagan, starting pitcher, looks like he could be an ace. So, looks like they could be competitive this year. I plan on getting out to a handful of games again, though. I don't know. Anybody else got anything in the chat? Any other NFL moves we're missing, or any questions or anything?
Yeah, we're off-season mode here. We don't have as much to talk about.
Right, only an hour and 5 minutes worth of stuff to talk about. So, the draft is coming up here, rapidly approaching. We're going to look into that when we get closer to the draft, and I'm going to kind of look into some like mock drafts and some breakdowns and see where now see, John, you were saying you weren't going to vote for me, and now he's saying I'm a true fan. So.
I mean, he didn't say he didn't like you.
Right, that's true. That is definitely true. So we'll when we get closer to the draft here, we'll talk about that. Obviously, there's NFL news and happenings and goings on all the time. We should have an answer on the vote next Wednesday, so I'm sure that'll be a topic we discuss, whether it goes yay or nay and why we think it went the way that it went. So definitely appreciate everybody who watches. Thank you so much, especially to our friends in the chat here, John C. and Dylan and Laney and Doug, our girl out there in San Diego, Maria. I know she's excited for her Padres to start playing some baseball from the post she puts out there on X and social media. So can't thank you all enough for watching. If you could help spread the word about the channel and get some people to subscribe, we're really trying to get to the 1,000 subscriber mark before the season starts. So I imagine everybody in the chat right now, but if you're watching, this is the first time you've seen the show, make sure you click that like, make sure you click that subscribe. We've been streaming on Rumble, so if you got the Rumble app, head on over there and give us a follow and give us a like and maybe give us a view or two there. Trying all the different ways we can to spread the word on the show. And just like this thing has gotten more and more fun as we've done it over the last 2 or 3 years. And like that's 99% in part to just more and more people watching and making more and more friends here and people in the chat and interacting with us on social media.
Dodgers and Rockies. No.
We grew up watching the Dukes out there in Albuquerque, Dodgers farm club. So I don't have, I'm not a Dodgers fan, but I don't really, their National League team. Don't really have a lot of hate for them, except for they are the best team almost every year and can't win the World Series somehow. But
yeah.
They won that fake World Series during the COVID shortened season, but you played. I mean, everybody played by the same rules and played the same amount of games a year, so I guess that's still fairly legit. But yeah, thanks again everybody who's watching. We'll be back next week. We'll probably talk about the stadium vote, see if the Chiefs have signed anybody. Maybe they got Nick's guy there from Wales.
Let's go.
Maybe look into that a little bit more. So as always, thank you for watching. Click like, click subscribe, and until next time. Let's go, Chiefs!
Let's go, Chiefs!